All right, welcome to Now This Is Podcasting. I'm your host, Connor. I have my co-host, Jaden here. Yee And former guest, Calvin.
Thanks for having me back.
And this is part 2 of our review of Hereditary. This is going to cover more of like symbols. We're going to go over Paimon a bit, and then discussing the coven quite a bit. You know, kind of like the subtext, kind of diving deeper into this. So I'm excited to get this one started. I think if you listen to part 1, you know that we are really fond of this one. So I always like diving deeper and getting more into it.
Yeah, and fondness means you get a part 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think this is what I love about doing these horror movies in October. It seems like all the ones we've done, it's like because this is a genre that I think is usually thought of as like, this is kind of the step-headed red child of filmmaking, you know?
Yeah.
Gosh, shoot me. I can't say it right anymore.
Yeah, you'll never outlive that, bud.
Red-headed stepchild.
There you go.
No. Step-headed red child.
Yeah.
Stop.
But it's looked at as kind of, I think, like a lower form of filmmaking, and I like that all of our deep dives we're doing now are all on horror movies.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
It's such the ones we've picked out, I think, all have a really great story that is just set in a kind of a horror as the backdrop to it. So
Yeah, and I think that that's the thing that it kind of frustrates me about horror, as it exists in Hollywood. In the same sort of way with sci-fi, with fantasy, there is a lot of subtext that you can actually put into your films, but it's like plot devices. It's it's game theory, as like, oh yeah, you've never heard of this, or chaos theory, or in the case of horror, it's just like random Book of the Dead type thing, like The Evil Dead 2, or Evil Dead 1 and 2. Because
Right.
man,
Or 3, or the remake. Or the show.
yeah, and it's just like, yeah, my gosh, yeah, exactly. But they're all
I
like,
forgot all that stuff exists. Oh my god.
yeah, the whole Evil Dead universe. Oh, and like, what is it? Army of Darkness.
Right.
Yeah, that's the third one. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I'm not up to date on those because like
That
they
one
don't,
is so
yeah.
just out of nowhere compared to the other ones.
It's just like a lot of it. There's depth to mine, and it just wants to stay superficial, and I find that so frustrating.
Yeah, and I think that this film treats its horror element so much differently. It's used so much better than I think a lot of the kind of contemporary films in that genre. You know, like I think I always make fun of Conjuring and Annabelle and stuff like that. It's like, why stop making these? Make more stuff like Hereditary that's so much more scary, or like Paranormal Activity. Why did those movies like kind of take over cinema for so long?
Because one of them was successful.
and
Yeah.
genuinely terrifying.
I guess, but then it's
There were some parts of some where I was like, oh, this is pretty fucked up, dude.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
The first one is amazing. I don't find Blair Witch to be all that scary, but the first Paranormal Activity.
They do have a Blair Witch video game on the Oculus. That'll freak you out.
Oh man.
Yeah.
that
pretty
actually
creepy.
sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where film goes in terms of augmented reality.
Oh, that's interesting. I had never really
I mean,
associated those two together.
I've seen installations, or I've wanted to go to installations where they are like augmented reality stories. Like, so you actually go there, you have to wait in line because there's only so many headsets, and you put them on, and you can see the whole story. Like, it's all happening,
Yeah.
but it depends on where you actually look.
I mean, I definitely watched some
like that a
kind
lot.
of films in VR.
really pushing the boundary of good taste.
All right, let's talk about Paimon.
Yeah, let's talk about Paimon. So Paimon is obviously the, I don't know about antagonist here necessarily, but he's certainly the object of attention for the coven. And Paimon is actually one of the 72 demons mentioned in the Ars Goetia, one of the books of the Lesser Key of Solomon. The symbol that the coven uses is actually Paimon's sigil, but it's got one less head. The real one has 4 of those like circles on top. And the myths around King Solomon say that, and this is King Solomon from the Bible, say that he learned how to conjure demons and use them for his own end. Like, the seal of Solomon is actually a hexagram inside of a circle. It's the Star of David without the circle. So you can see how these symbols change over time. And it's been carried over into other esoteric traditions like the pentagram, the unicursal hexagram, which is like, if you've ever seen Bring Me the Horizon, there's a band that uses that symbol right now. It came out of a lot of Aleister Crowley's work. want to say he's American. I don't care that much. So
These are all names that we recognize.
a lot of people that are into this stuff are like, yeah, you're not going deep enough. This is all very surface level stuff. But yeah, so you have other like all of these other ones. And the basic principle is that you have like triangles and other squares and circles, depending on if you're talking about alchemy or if you're talking about a specific esoteric tradition. Like the
Or Squid
principle.
Game.
Yeah.
Squid Game has got circles, squares, and triangles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of. But again, like, but so like the principle for conjuring circles is such that the inner triangle, pentagram, hexagram contains the demon and allows one to harness the power. And it's really important to think about that when you think about Annie's ritual versus Joan's ritual, because when Joan performs it, she has a tablecloth over it, right? And when you pull that off, you actually see a triangle carved into the table. So she had done it correctly to keep herself safe. When Annie does it, there's no such protection. So they're just inviting it into the house.
Yeah.
Right. I talking about like kind of shapes and everything. I know that the product designer there was the idea of like sacred geometry, like triangles representing like Annie, Peter, and Charlie, and then earlier you have a square kind of representing the whole family when Charlie's a part of it. So I like that idea too, and kind of a circle would represent kind of this kind of how the film starts and ends, and it's kind of the culmination of like Paimon arriving and everything like that. So I like the idea of that. I think sacred geometry is such a cool thing to just say in general. So
Yeah, exactly. Right. Just as a phrase, it's interesting. But yeah, you see triangles everywhere. Ellen's room, when Annie goes in there after someone has opened the door, there's a triangle on the floor. Joan's table has a triangle. Charlie's room is actually, because of how it's like a loft, it actually comes to a point. It's a triangle.
It's carved into like some of the hallways have little symbols and stuff carved. A triangle is one of them.
Yep, exactly. The treehouse is a triangle, and then the words written all over the house too. You start to put together this picture that the house is actually, it's meant to conjure Paimon in a geometric sense. Because of all of those elements, it's set up in such a way that the coven has been working towards that end, setting up the house for the purpose of bringing Paimon into the house.
There's one phrase that's written, if it's a Liftouch Pandemonium.
Pandemonium, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is that what you're referring to? As some of the stuff that's scripted in the wall? Yeah.
What are the other ones that are not sacrimony? Satiny. Is one of them, and it's interesting watching Annie paint in her miniatures. She takes those words and puts them into the miniatures too, as well, which kind of again sets her up as outside of the dollhouse drama and a part of the coven.
Yeah, and I just think that word that's the Liftouch is Hebrew and means to open, and then the second word is all demons. So it's like opening the house to demons, which is essentially what that seance that like kind of paper she gets to read. And I love how she just reads it, because Joan just tells her like, oh, it'll conjure your daughter, and like there's no second thought about it, like what it might do. It just kind of opens up the floodgates and everything. And so I like, like you said, I like the idea of the house kind of being an entity and like being a part of this like ritual as well.
Yeah, I do love that a lot. I love looking back through the film and finding the coven's influence. Like we talked about in the first part, how he hides it really well, all of the sinister forces working against the family. But there's a number of really fun clues. When they first get home from Ellen's
we get back from Ellen's funeral.
She gets back from the funeral. You can hear footsteps and doors closing before they actually walk into the foyer. Yeah,
and I think we had talked about that in the first episode. Is like this kind of, it's like an ominous feeling that they're kind of being surrounded by this cult, and like it culminates at the end where they are literally surrounded by the cult. But it's kind of a feeling throughout, and like little clues like that, like is what build that up. It really hint towards that. I like that a lot. I hadn't actually noticed that until you brought it up when we were discussing this earlier. So I'm excited to go back and kind of try and catch that one.
Yeah, there's lots of them like that. And so that's another reason that I think of the grief circle as being like a conjuring circle, or like, like from the witch, a witch's Sabbath type thing, is because you also see Ellen's body like in a circle of fire, like out in the field.
Oh, when Charlie goes into the backyard and sees it,
Charlie. And you see a bunch of footsteps on the path over there, and I think it's meant to show the coven actually took the body over there and lit for whatever purpose. You know, who knows like what tradition they really follow.
Yeah.
That this would make sense, but
So we had discussed before recording this. The body of Ellen is found in the attic, and prior to that, Steve gets a phone call, and he finds out that the grave has been desecrated, and he's like, "What? It's only been like a day or two." And
Yeah.
so my thought is that Annie's sleepwalking again, and she's dug it up herself and put it in the attic.
Yeah.
But Calvin has a different take on that one.
yeah, no, I think like because you've established that something else is happening here, like all of these other footsteps, the sound of the footsteps in the attic, they suggest that the coven has been a part of this house for why Ellen's door was open when they got back, and they were like, why is this? And she asked Steve to lock it, and she knows she's paranoid, but it's very clear that either they exist and they're actually interfering, or Annie is crazy and none of these people are real. But because it's just a mental projection. Like we talk about how in the grief circle, she talks about how Charles hung himself because her older brother, he hung himself because he was upset with his mother for putting people inside of him. And you think of the coven being representative of like a mind state, like all of these people are inside of her mind as like a part of the ritual in that sense.
Huh. I thought, like, I mean, I assumed that she was trying to put Paimon in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, like, yeah, I mean, I'd never thought that she was sleepwalking and grabbed the body. I thought it was the coven the whole time. I know that Steve says that, like, or whatever, that she did it, or she might have done it after he finds the body in there.
I think either interpretation like function well in the
Yeah,
story.
I think
because
like
I like that take too. That
Yeah.
it's the coven has been a part and been able to move in and out of the house kind of freely without anyone noticing. That is also terrifying. But I also kind of like the idea of like Annie being unaware that she is a part of the cult with like she doesn't even know that she's kind of carrying out this like will that they have. So I think that's also scary. I think both like function well.
Yeah. I mean, Ari Aster did say that like everything done is done by the coven.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like even like when he's when freaking Peter's getting his like head pulled or whatever when he's sleeping, he's like, that's not his mom. That's someone from the coven doing that.
That's not a dream?
No, that's real.
That's amazing.
Oh, that makes that even more scary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it doesn't make sense. Like there's no way she could get behind it.
Yeah.
The way that I think the way that scene played to me is it was like I thought it was a dream because then it seems like he wakes up, he sits up in bed and he sees his mom. She's like, "What's happening?" She's like, "Why were you choking me?" And she's like, "I didn't. I just came in and you were yelling." I thought it was a dream. That makes it so much more scary if it's one of the
It's one of the people. Yeah,
one of the
pulling
cult
on his
members.
head. Yeah.
Oh my god, that's so freaky. I'm glad you said that. That makes that scene so much better.
Yep.
As if this movie needed to get any better than it already is.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love that a lot.
Yeah, wow. I'm kind of blown away by that because it does. I feel like there were a lot of dream sequences where those types of things, like especially right there, because she was talking about how she never wanted him. She tried to save him by having an abortion.
Yeah.
Because like she knew what was coming, basically. Like the same thing that happened to Charles, the same type of thing that her mother tried to do with her. Like it feels like and a lot of
Hereditary.
Yeah, well, exactly. But the other thing is like a lot of therapists, counselors describe whether or not your child knows your secrets. Secrets inflict psychic wounds just by existing. They affect you in such a personal way that you end up hurting the ones around you, whether they know what the motivation behind them is. So I think she always had a sense of like, yeah, her mom had DID, dissociative identity disorder, but she was also like doing something else that was kind of crazy. I think that's kind of implied as well.
Yeah, no, there's much more than just like a psychological disorder to that character for sure. I mean that obviously there's paranormal like entities and stuff going on in this film, so to kind of play both those things together make it especially scary because it's something that we all like people know about disorders like this, and that's something that like you feel and you notice it. And people have like people in their family who experience those, and then to add on top of that, like there's also a demon in this movie makes it more freaky.
Yes.
So I like kind of weaving those two together to like add to the anxiety in this film.
Yeah, because it's also like, not only is it fun in figuring out which one is which, but it also makes okay, well, it's just mental illness. You know, they're talking about DID and psychotic depression. All of that makes sense in how someone would express their disorder as like demon worshiping, very, very evil type of thing, within like a narrative sense, not necessarily how people actually behave, but there's just so much uncertainty there. Like, is it really that because they're a sick person, or are they a sick person and have latched onto something that's really dark as well because they are a sick person?
I think Steve represents that really well in this kind of I think he looks at what's going on with Annie and he's like, something's wrong with you. Like, he doesn't view this as like something supernatural that's happening.
No, yeah.
He thinks that like, okay, like we need to help you out. We need to figure out what's going on in a more like scientific way. Like we need to figure out how to treat this. And Annie is like, no, this is something much more. She's like, I had these visions and I was ignoring them for so long. And she's like, I'm a medium, and she's looking at this in more of a supernatural way, where he's looking at it in more of like a clinical way. And I like that disconnect between the two characters. It builds up kind of there's like an emotional scene where they come together and they have like this argument, and that's one of the scenes I like the most, where it's a long shot where they just deliver a bunch of dialogue, and it's just great to sit back and watch. But that's where their relationship really comes to a head, and their two like opposing views latch onto one or the other, kind of. And it's like, how do we experience like that scene? Which one do you identify with the most? And that's why I think that scene is so good.
Yeah, and it exists. So it's also it's audience experience. Like, which one is this really happening? Is she just crazy? But it's also another one of those things we talk about folktales and mental projections all the time. You can think of this as an internal dialogue of a single person. Like, if you think of Steve as being a projection of her more logical self, she's going like, no, this is really happening. It's like, no, you're crazy. You really need to get some help right now. And then to physically burn that part of her, like, no, this is happening, just adds to the element of someone who's given over to their psychosis. And I think that's another fun way of looking at it too. Another thing that you can, and another way that it's represented as, it's all from Annie's perspective, is like when she knocks over the paint bottle. If you watch closely, she doesn't actually touch it.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, she doesn't touch it. And if you look in the top right of the frame, in the window, there's Paimon's blue light shimmering on one of the panes.
Oh,
and
dang.
That paint color is teal. And teal is a big, I mean, obviously that's his blue light there, but it's also like the lockers are teal. There's a lot of teal things. The pigeon is teal. That color is very representative. Like, I didn't dive a lot into it, but it's a color that he paid attention to. So again, but it's all happening from her perspective. So
I hate that I've seen this movie a bunch of times and I'm still missing stuff. I do love these discussions because now it's like, okay, I need to go back and check this out. But yeah, no, I am glad you brought that up.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see what else. Same sort of thing, like Paimon leading around Peter. Like, I think Peter is very much, you can look at Peter as either being possessed by the coven or having the same psychological problems that Annie does. And with certain types of diseases, they start to manifest later. DID being one of those ones I think that starts to manifest like early 20s. But they're not apparent diseases at young ages, the way that like being on the spectrum is, the way that depression is. They start to manifest as you age more and more, and we don't really know why. But so this could literally be happening, like why it had been undiagnosed for so long in him. And so now you have it portrayed in both characters of seeing this blue light and being haunted by it.
Right. Do we want to talk about why is Peter not like the vessel for Paimon right off the bat? Why is Charlie so important to like kind of she needs to inhabit Peter's body, that way they can get Paimon into it? Do we want to discuss that more?
Yeah, I think that's interesting, especially considering her name being Charlie.
I think, isn't that the point, is like the grandmother was hoping so badly for a boy that they end up giving her like a traditional boy's name.
they gave her the same name as her son.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Is like they changed it just enough so it's still gender appropriate and it's not like over the top obvious, but I think it's just obvious enough that it's a fun little fact.
Yeah, I am confused as why didn't they just do it with Peter right away?
Well, because they were estranged. She wasn't living in the house.
Oh, okay.
So that was one part of it. The other part that I just don't understand, why did it take so long?
Yeah.
Like there was no.
Like they waited till the grandmother's death for all this to happen.
Yeah,
Seems
clearly.
just odd. Yeah.
Yeah, clearly they orchestrated Charlie getting killed because we saw Paymon's sigil on the light post.
Yeah, they put
right?
the deer there and
Yeah.
the nuts in the cake, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
They convinced all the teens in town to.
I'm assuming the one
bake
teenager who knew how to bake cake maybe wasn't a teenager.
Yeah, yeah.
That's actually interesting. You bring that up. After Charlie's died and Peter's there under the bleachers smoking weed with his friends.
Yeah.
And he starts to cry. He's like freaking out, and I think part of that is kind of Charlie inhabiting his body because he's having like he talks about his throat feeling tight the same way Charlie did after the allergic reaction. That one of the kids under there, he's got like his hair up in like a little bun, and that same kid you see him later on in the treehouse. So there's even kids that are a part of this.
Okay, yeah.
coven.
So saying, it's like
I did not
I did
see
not
that.
notice that either. But yeah, I would assume that
So I know you
100% of Charlie's death has to do with the coven.
Yeah,
Like,
I know you made they put the nuts in the cake as a
Yeah.
joke, but it might actually be that
It
one of
probably
the kids
is,
at the
yeah.
party is like, oh, okay, let me.
probably watching, we'll see that kid like in the house or in the treehouse or something.
You know, and that actually makes the over obvious chopping of the nuts fun. Like we were so hung up on like, oh, it's so obvious. We're like, oh no, you losers don't
But now it's
see
just
it.
like, I'm definitely killing this bitch. I'm putting all these nuts in here.
Yeah, I think like
she's like chopping like praise Paimon.
yeah, exactly. Oh my god, I said that to one person I knew, and he was like, "Oh no, you don't say it." And I was like, "Will you believe this unironically?" Like, I found this on Wikipedia.
Right. No, I like that you brought that up as a joke, and it's made easily my least favorite part of the movie.
Yeah,
actually,
better.
like now I'll watch, I'll be like, yeah, that's on purpose.
Yeah.
And it's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
we missed the subtext of the subtext.
Yeah.
Because we're just dumb. We're just out here.
I hope
Giving our
that's the
shitty
intention.
opinions.
Like you said, it's like everything is orchestrated by this coven. So
Yeah.
I like that. Okay.
Because like I did see, I had started looking. I was looking for adults. I didn't even think of the kids because I didn't remember seeing any. Because everybody's bowed.
Yeah.
So I was looking for everybody that's in the house naked is definitely adult. So I saw one dude that was
Yeah, because they're naked. You can't just have.
Well, we've talked about that in The
Yeah,
Witch.
Witch,
Like
yeah.
as long as you have the modesty suits and CGI, everything, that's apparently okay.
Still weird.
But yeah, that's really fascinating.
Okay. This has made this film like, okay, it's basically perfect to me now. Now that we've gotten that silly nut thing out of the way. Okay, perfect.
exactly.
I do like that you brought up though, because I thought the same thing about Peter. It's like, why didn't they just do it to Peter?
Yeah.
But it does make sense because she, in that like kind of when she's in that grief support group, she talks about how it wasn't until later on that her mother moves in with them, and even still they were kind of off and on, talking, not talking, and so that makes more sense because I thought the same thing. I feel like the coven could have still orchestrated that whole thing to do it with Peter because they seem omnipresent in this movie. So,
Well,
it feels
yeah,
like
I don't
they
know
could've
why they ended up conjuring. Why they needed to evoke Paimon into Charlie is confusing to me because obviously they did it to Charles, and so he died. So I don't know why you need to. Maybe because you contain it within Charlie, but then I don't know why you kill Charlie because now you have the same problem.
Yeah.
It's very confusing to
that
me.
part doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
It's
Yeah.
like extra.
But it does work very well for the movie. So
Yeah, it does absolutely.
Yeah, it's the thing. I think stepping back, it seems like extra steps, but I like that the extra steps exist because now I get more Hereditary. I get to see this movie I love for a little bit longer, so it's fine with
Right.
me. I think it works in the film, but kind of looking back, I'm like, I kind of don't get it, but
Yeah.
it'll-
Why
it'll
did they
work, so.
kill her the way they killed her too?
there has to be decapitation,
I know, but why did it have to be an accident?
huh?
Like, why did they do it that way? Why didn't they just orchestrate some other accident that would have absolutely been guaranteed? You know, or why didn't they just
It
kill her?
worked. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it worked, but like that doesn't necessarily mean like you would think that a coven that's been doing this for a long time would have, you know, their methods kind of sorted out.
Maybe this isn't the first time they've done that. Maybe they did it in 2004 with two drunk friends.
Oh my god.
My gosh, yeah.
Do we want to move into? I kind of want to talk about the sound that Charlie makes.
Oh yeah.
So you have. I'm hoping that you fix this for me because I think it sucks. It reminds me a lot of. I want to say it's one of the Conjuring trailers. It's like the kids like clapping. It's just a sound that's supposed to be creepy for your creepy movie. And I think a lot of Charlie's character is creepy girl acting creepy in your scary movie, and I think it kind of sucks. So I don't like it at all. Can you? I've been waiting. I have a lot of anticipation to understand or hear your take on this because I think it's awful. I think it's dumb.
I think it's amazing. I think there's a few ways that it works
Perfect.
that it works very well. So first of all, we've established that Charlie makes a clucking sound. Is it a bird? Because birds are represented in a lot of places. You have the pigeon. You have her cutting off the head of the pigeon and making a doll. Then you have her head being on a doll at the end. So clearly making the connection there that they're the same. You have a bird in a bird cage at the end. There's another bird somewhere. I can't remember now.
Flies into the window.
Well, that's the same one that she cuts the head off.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
I think there might have been birds in her room as well too, like on the walls. So there's that. Like, is are birds associated with Paimon in some way? You also have Paimon depicted as riding a camel, so a la Monty Python.
Oh my god! Okay.
Which I think is funny. Yeah, they probably just went with that because, like, given the flight velocity of like African swallows, they didn't have access to coconuts.
Right.
So
okay. All right. Cool. You fix that part for me.
it's better. It's better. So
I still think it's silly.
I have a couple better ones still.
Okay.
So some occultists also suggest that the etymology of the word Paimon means a tinkling sound. So he might have been named Paimon because when he was evoked by King Solomon, his riches jingled. And so, I will name him Paimon. And that's because that's where all of the names come from too, is when Solomon goes through all of it, he meets them. I mean, it's suggested that they tell him their name, So obviously they're still made up. Like, they're not real. So it's not like they told them their name. So that's why they think that that's what Paimon means. But one other way that it still really works is that you have this connection of the clucking sound with Charlie, with Paimon, and it's a fun way of letting everyone know, other than the fact that they address Peter as being Charlie, but it's a fun visual thing that when Peter finally gets possessed and he clicks his tongue, that all of that right there is said in just a single sound.
Yeah.
And I love that. So if you don't like
that's what I'm saying.
now,
Why you don't need the blue light.
In some places I do like it, like we said with ours in general. But yeah, I think I can agree with that. Like, pick one or the other.
Yeah. I mean, it still works. The movie's still great, so
yeah,
it doesn't necessarily take that much away from it. So.
I think that the clicking only exists so that you can have Peter do it at the very end to kind of tie it all in together. That's the only reason I think it exists. Because I think in and of itself, it's annoying, and it's just a creepy girl being creepy, and that's kind of if I want to dig on like kind of crappy horror trope that made its way into this movie, that's like the one I would nitpick on because I just don't think you need it. But then again, I guess it works at the very end, so I guess it's a setup and payoff that I can appreciate. But in and of itself, I think it's still silly. I like your explanations. I still think it's silly.
Well, we'll talk about your position
you can
after
find
this.
an explanation for anything if you look hard enough.
Yeah.
I do think it's just a trope for the movie.
Yeah, I'm fine with it just being that because I think it still works.
Yeah,
but
it's fine.
I like all of these.
It's a
other
weird
pieces
movie.
too.
You got to have some weird shit, dude. It works with me. I had no issue with it. So.
One other question. She mentions this in when she first goes to the grief counseling. She says, I'm just here for trying it. I went to one of these a few years ago and it seemed to work, so here I am again. Why did she go there?
I'd assume because of her brother.
No, he died when they were kids.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, few is very vague.
Yeah, well, that's it made it like they made it seem like within the last 5 years, the way she said it.
I get it. It seems more recent than something she did as a kid. Like,
yeah.
I don't know many kids that would be like, let me go to a group, grief session, like a grief counseling or grief support group. I don't think there's a lot of kids who would attend something like that.
I did it when I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then my idea of it is just wrong. Then
Well,
That's
I
fine.
mean,
Just-
I could be wrong too, but it could be because like maybe her separation with her mother, or I don't know, maybe her issues with Charlie and her being just a weird kid. She had to go something like that.
Oh, you
There's
know
a
what?
lot of explanations for it that could be. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's. She talks about in kind of that dream sequence about how she was trying to get rid of Peter, and she was going to do anything it took to, she didn't try to have a miscarriage. And so I wonder if maybe she was grieving over that, like her attempts at not having Peter. So I wonder if
Yeah.
maybe that's part of
Maybe
it.
that's part of it. Yeah.
Or maybe she did have another child.
That was maybe the other kind of, but it's never
Ooh.
said. So I guess
I know, it's just a fun thing. Like maybe there was another boy that they did actually try and get their hooks. They were like at that point that she was back in their life. Ellen.
Yeah. Maybe it was a daughter, and they're trying to get their hooves in her, and her name was Ada.
Oh my god.
But yeah, maybe they were going to have another boy, and she was like, no, like not with you back in my life.
Yeah.
I can't have another boy.
I like that idea a lot. It's seems like kind of a throwaway line, but it adds a little flavor. And now it brought up discussion here, so I like that. I like it. It's a
Yeah,
little-
especially when she's talking about like she's like she feels so much guilt. She's like, I was trying to save you, but she feels so much guilt from it,
Right.
Like which is very obvious there. So extending that to another child that she aborted, like the one that she didn't want to get rid of but wanted to keep from suffering the same fate.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. That's
a
an
good-
interesting
yeah, that's good.
idea. I hadn't like really, because in that scene I just focused so much on the dialogue and just experiencing Toni Collette do amazing things on screen that I didn't even like really think of that line. But that's interesting. What else do we have? Do we want to move on to the
Yeah, and so like
actual Hereditary?
yeah, I think that's there. We're at that point now where we keep alluding to these things that passed on from our relationships. Like I think one of the most cool shots is actually we see the buried houses diorama that's at the base of the stairs. We start at the bottom of it and we kind of twirl up to the top, and we see 3 different houses. And right, it's mentioned in an interview by the actual miniaturist as being a piece from one of Annie's previous exhibitions. And I think it perfectly encapsulates the film's major theme of generational relationships, especially with regard to those with mental illness and trauma. So we build our houses by burying the old, dilapidated houses of our parents and their parents before them. Like they're the foundation. And then the foundation becomes this mix of loosely packed dirt and crumbling facade as their minds fade, and because they didn't work on making themselves good people. And so in reality, like it's a metaphor for our shoddy coping mechanisms, because if our foundation are these terrible people, like how can we really work on ourselves? And so our houses, ourselves, start to crumble from the settling of the earth, and we can do nothing but inflict psychic wounds on the ones who trust us, who built their houses on ours. In short, my shortcomings are because of my parents. It's not my fault. I love that.
I like that a lot, and kind of the kind of cattywampus nature to that miniature as well. It's like it's what you said. It's perfectly representative of each generation kind of being more tilted and more off because of the people who came before them. And yeah, I think that what you said describes the miniature, and both of them, I think they represent kind of the intergenerational play between the grandmother Annie and then Charlie ultimately. So I think that's I do like that, just that shot of them coming down the stairs, and it's really quick. The house, the miniature isn't in it very long, but it like says a lot while it's in the frame. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's in a few other shots, and I kept wanting a closer look at it until you actually do get the one. I'm like, wow, now that says so much. I think it's a little, if they named the film anything other than Hereditary, it might have been a little bit harder to pick up on thematically. It's very on the nose in this case, but I think it's still very, very fun visually.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful.
Speaking of the name, I'm so glad it wasn't like Paimon Rising or something like
Yeah.
that. It's a ambiguous enough name that it makes it intriguing to go like, oh, what is this Hereditary all about? And it's, like I said, I love the trailer for it. I think it builds it up all really well. The same with like Midsummer, that it's like a really unassuming name, and it ends up opening up into this like really wild film. So I just the way he titles stuff, I think works out really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, rather than the Hereditary or the Midsummer. So to end this, like we've mentioned so many different things of whether this is family drama, whether this is all mental for Annie and to a lesser extent Peter, and whether all of these things are actually happening. So what is this movie to you? What resonates with you, and what interpretation do you prefer?
I mean, I prefer the coven is behind everything interpretation, that this is all actually, it's not just mental illness. I think there's mental illness that is caused by it, but I believe that all of this is real and this is all really happening to this family, and that, yeah, they are possessed, and at the end Peter is possessed and he is now the demon king Paimon or whatever.
Yeah, he's one of the
yeah,
kings.
and like, so I like to believe that this is all literal. Everything that's happening here, like, I don't think that it's all a perspective or a projection of Annie's mind or anyone else's. I think it's all real. I mean, she cuts her own head off, dude.
I mean, that's not something a sane person would do.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, if she was insane and this is all like part of her vision or whatever, like, that'd be the end of the thing, and it wasn't, unless, like, what you're saying is like it passes on to Peter. But either way,
Yeah.
either way, I believe that it is all literal and it's all real. That's why I want to see this movie, because I don't necessarily like things that are like, well, was it fucking, did this really happen or not? Like, I like to believe that it did happen. And this is all very, very real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think it works in the film better if this is happening. I think there are films who can use kind of that. Is it mental illness? Is it someone's thoughts that are causing this? Is it or is it something that's actually happening to them? And I think there are movies that play with that idea, and you can come away with like interpreting it one way or the other. I just think for me this works so much better if it is actually happening. Because again, the things I like most about this film is the family drama, and then it's like has the backdrop of this like paranormal situation that they're in, and so going into it, I like Steve as the character who is looking at it objectively, and he's like, no, this is something. It is some kind of mental illness that's causing this, and then for him to be wrong makes this film more creepy to me. To be it is actually something supernatural that's happening to the family. So yeah, I agree with Jane. I like it. I like seeing this more literal. As far as like what resonates with me the most, like I'll say it again, I love family drama, and I love the way this like especially once you get down to Peter, Steve, and Annie. I think that's when this movie like really opens up and they really shine in it. One of my favorite scenes, we've talked about the dinner scene, and Annie's like, I can't forgive you because like you won't take responsibility for this, and she talks about they can't even use this situation to grow from it. She was like, at least we could have used this to grow closer. We could have achieved something positive out of this, but we can't even do that. And like that, all that drama to me totally works. And again, I think you could remove all the paranormal stuff from this, all the supernatural, all the demons, the cult, and it still all works so well to me. And that's the part that resonates with me most. I love family drama.
Yeah, and I would say, yes, this is all actually happening. I think this is so much fun in terms of, you know, I talk about like, oh, it's from Annie's perspective, it's from Steve's perspective, it's from Peter's perspective, but really like they're just perspectives of the characters that we actually empathize with, that we're concerned about, and all of these things are actually happening. I think you can look at some of these things as being mental projections, those types of things, but I think they're allegorical in nature. I think that you have things actually happening, but they have subtext as to how we treat our interpersonal relationships with those who are abusive / have mental disorders. I think all of that is subtext to the reality. And I think that's, normally that's not the case for me. Normally I find all of the subtext to be so much more interesting and like the point of the film.
Right.
But it does feel like here it's what is on screen is actually happening. And all of this other stuff is just layers that are really secondary. Although it is a family, it's the skin deep stuff. It's the family drama. It's the coven. That's all skin deep. That's the point of the film, though. All of the other stuff is just how we build real feeling characters.
Right. I think when we did our review on The Witch, I was the one who was like, I like this like at the surface level just for the family drama, and Calvin, you were especially latched onto like all the symbolism and all the subtext that goes on with this. So I am surprised that you're like, no, it's kind of just what's on screen and that's what's happening. It's refreshing to hear you have a take that's
A leaf
similar
is a
to
leaf, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and like I'm not a one-trick pony. Like, but I think like
it's refreshing that we watched the same movie finally.
Yeah, exactly. But I think of it like why it's the way that Ari Aster treats, like his, we talked about like his student films, how he likes the family drama, he likes the melodrama, and these come out of like real personal relationships, whereas Robert Eggers builds everything out of archetypes, which are rooted in the subconscious psychology. And so they feel like where I end up interpreting it is where the filmmakers started with as a bouncing point for their story. So that's why I ultimately come to those conclusions. I feel like those, I mean, not to toot my own horn, I guess it sounds very egotistical that like this is what they intended, but you bet your ass I saw all of that.
No, it's great.
But that's why I feel that they operate better that way, is because that was the intent. That was how they crafted their story.
Right. Do we want to rate this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do we want to give it?
I don't know. We could do bird heads. We could do.
What you said?
We could do piano wire flosses.
Oh my god.
Okay, yeah, that's the creepiest one, so we're gonna do that one.
Okay,
That fits
excellent.
this movie. What do you give it, Jaden?
So this is a movie where I look at it. It's a very successful horror movie. I think that maybe even Ari Aster may have seen The Conjuring and be like, man, this movie sucks. If only someone did something like this, but very good.
Yeah,
And like, because I mean, there's a lot of similarities between the movies, like you said, like the clicking, the clapping, the mom being possessed, things like that.
yeah,
I think that, like, yeah, he just made the ultimate like new age horror movie.
Yeah,
in this.
thank
And so I'm gonna give this a 9.6.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
That's about what I think it deserves. I'd go with a 9. I
Yeah.
think this is now that we've fixed my big problem with the nuts. This is, like I said, this is nearly a perfect movie to me. I think maybe I could do with like maybe robust moments of the score. That's maybe like a nitpick I could have.
Yeah.
But I still love the sound of this. The sound design is awesome.
Yeah, especially the.
Yeah, the clicking is my favorite part. Yeah, so I go with a 9. I think this is an amazing movie and everyone should go see it.
Yeah.
What do you give this one, Calvin?
I would say, to me, it's not. I just have a special place in my heart for Robert Eggers films, and I think The Lighthouse is almost one of the most perfect movies I've ever seen. So I don't know if I can rate it above that right now. And I gave that one a 9.5. It probably needs more points, actually. Hereditary, I think, is probably like a 9.3. Piano wires. It just does so many things so right. These are the types of things, like, you can tell stories that are compelling and engaging, your popcorn flick, whatever that you want to call it, like it's a horror movie, but it's the way the camera talks and speaks and communicates it elevates the piece. Not only the acting, but it's the camera work that isn't present in anything 80s. Yeah. All of that is you can see the talent there. And those are the things that I love.
Right. All right. Yeah. No. Give Toni Collette an award.
Yeah,
please.
Jesus, it's a few years late, but you can still make
Give
that
her
point.
something.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Maybe
Let's get her in some more. Let's get her in some more.
Maybe
movies,
some
too.
reparations.
Yeah. All right. With that, I think we're wrapping this one up. I'm your host, Connor. Got my co-host, Jaden.
Yee.
And former guest, Calvin.
Thanks for having me back.
And thank you for listening to Now This Is Podcasting.